Lamar Jackson leads the Baltimore Ravens to a huge win following a disappointing outcome in Week 1.
Roquan Smith filled up the stat sheet and had a day for the Ravens defense.
And there were even storylines before the game started. Jair Alexander was a healthy scratch. Twitter Sanders turned down the Ravens. We talk about all that and so much more coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Ravens Squad Show. Post-game, after the Ravens dismantle the Cleveland Browns 41-17. Thank you for joining us. This is Sam Njoku, joined as always with Kevin Oestreicher and Kadri Ismail. We are here right after the Ravens take care of business. After not so great Week 1, the Ravens bounce back in Week 2 and take care of business against a division foe in the Cleveland Browns. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. You can just move through life, or you can find the things that move you. It's your choice. Mazda, move and be moved. Kevin, the Ravens take care of business. It's looking good. The offense continues to hum. 40 points plus for the second straight week in a row. How do you feel about this offense after the Ravens take care of business against the Joe Flacco-led Cleveland Browns?
Well, not as good as I think I would have felt if you told me before the game that the Ravens put up 40 points. But you know what? They got the job done. Now, I think that they were probably gifted anywhere from 14 to 21 points from the defense and special teams. But you know what? I think that they showed a little bit of how they can just grind out games. And, you know, there are some concern points. The right side of the offensive line has had moments throughout the course of the first 2 weeks that clearly need to get a little better. You know, I think that the run game obviously didn't do anything today, but I also want to drive home the point that the Browns are a very good defense. I mean, and we talked about it on Wednesday. The Browns held the Bengals, which is a very potent offense in Week 1, just 7 second half yards. This is not just Myles, Garrett, and friends. They have a lot of playmakers at all 3 levels of the defense, and they're better than what they saw against the Bills in week number 1. Now, was that an excuse? No, you have to be better on the offense. I thought at times Todd Monken's play calling was interesting, is the word I will use. And I also thought that, you know, one of those situations where the Ravens get the ball down to the half-yard line and then don't use Derrick Henry on first and goal, and they try to get a little too cute. I thought that was a mistake, and I get there was the penalty, and they move back 5 yards after that. But, man, if Derrick Henry gets stopped on first down, then you can maybe throw the ball there. So I thought that they showed toughness throughout the game. And honestly, guys, this might have been the quietest 4-touchdown performance Lamar Jackson has ever had. You look at the box score after the fact, you're like, wait a second, like Lamar had 4 touchdowns, and you look back and you're like, wait a second, yeah, he did. The Tylen play, and DeAndre had, and Tez Walker. And the point I'll make about Tez real quick, and I know Q, I'm sure you have a lot to say about Tez, is the fact that, you know, Eric DeCosta compared him to Torrey Smith, right? He said you saw similarities between Tez and Torrey. We know that Tez Walker has 3 career NFL catches for 3 career NFL touchdowns. Every catch has gone for a touchdown. You want to know who also did that? Torrey Smith. That first game against the Rams, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns. So it's funny how the sports world works out. You know, the offense didn't play their best game, but I think that's the beauty of this offense, actually, is the fact that they can have a game like they did today and still put up as many points as they did.
Interesting game, because when you look at a division opponent and they know you, you know them, there are those tendencies that you know you got to break. There are those tendencies that they know that they're going to have to come up against and stop. And so that's where I'm going to use the phrase grace is given to Todd Monken. When you see that defensive front be so formidable, Garrett, Collins, Graham, McGuire, I mean, they brought it. You know, Schultz is sitting there as a D coordinator thinking that, you know what, the world is my oyster. All I got to do is just rush my 4 guys and just disrupt the Ravens offense. Every time, you know, Todd Monken's offense was trying to do the typical scheme where you're going to either have a pin pull block scheme or you're going to have a double guard pull, you literally saw them, the Cleveland Browns defensive front, just be so disruptive. And so because of that, I think when they did get into the red zone off of the beautiful D-Hop play, you were like, all right, let's just go ahead and do something different. And I thought Zaire, had the ball. It was a dot of a throw, as they like to call it. And unfortunately, he just didn't come down with it. Now, if it's Isaiah Likely, I think it's a different story. If it's even, Charlie Kolar in that scenario, it's a different story. But, Zaire is in a tough spot. He doesn't really get balls thrown to him that much. Wasn't able to take care or take advantage of his opportunity, and so be it. You look at the false start. Again, I think he got over anxious. 2 guys in motion. They're going to call that. Now you're behind and you're trying to figure something out. Wasn't able to do it. They got the field goal. Great. But I just think that even outside of that, the bigger picture is the fact that you saw a Ravens offense trying to figure itself out. And in the meantime, the defense showed up and showed out. That, to me, was impressive.
Yeah, that offensive line of the Ravens, and I'm sure we had Gerald Jones just coming here that the line was trash. I'm sure he's talking about the Ravens O-line and not the Ravens D-line, which we'll get to later on in the show. But, yeah, it's hard to pinpoint whether or not it was the fact that the Browns had a great, defensive front, which I agree with, or if the Ravens offensive line was just terrible, especially on the right side. Maybe a combination of both. Kevin, what were your thoughts about the right side of the line in this game? We knew coming in that Myles Garrett could be a force, but it seemed like everybody, including Myles Garrett, Mason Graham as well, were just coming after that Ravens front, and it really slowed things down on the offense, especially in the first half.
Yeah, it was tough in certain spots for them for sure, and it's something they have to improve on. I mean, it also just seemed like the Browns, particularly on some of those first down Derrick Henry runs, were just swarming the line and almost could tell what the Ravens were going to run on some of those plays, sending all those guys in there. And, there was the play, I think it was to Derrick Henry early in the game. Roger Rosengarten gets beat across the side of his body and, can't even get leverage on a guy. There was another play where Rosengarten got beat around the edge and Lamar held the ball for a long time, and that maybe was more of a coverage sack. But, that was a play where Rosengarten kind of got beat. You could see the guy coming around and, it ended up not helping out the Ravens. And it just felt like, again, when this offensive line loses, they lose loud, right? They lose really loudly. And so that's kind of what we saw again in this game, where you're looking at it and it's just kind of like, well, hold on a second. Like, the offense is still putting up points, but we're still seeing pressure being put on Lamar. We didn't necessarily see like Lamar magic a ton in this game. I mean, that play to D-Hop certainly was when he kind of escaped the pocket out there, but it just felt like stuff just was not in sync today. It wasn't in sync. And I think that was, the disappointing part about it. But again, you can't be too disappointed when you put up 40 points. I mean, that's what I keep telling myself is like, yes, there are things you can work on, but I'd rather them be able to work on it after scoring 40 points and winning the game than after a loss.
It's interesting. Again, I look at ebbs and flows of certain games, and anytime you have a division opponent, it's always going to be that really awkward flow. What I mean by awkward flow, when do you get into your rhythm? When do you break through the tendencies that whether it be Jim Schwartz against Todd Monken, or obviously you look at what Zach Orr did to the Browns offense. You're just sitting there, and Kevin Stefanski, I'm sure, is like, all right, well, let's try this. Oh, no, let's try that. Or, ooh, this one definitely is going to work. And I think that ping pong match is really what was on display today. But again, to Kevin's point, to our show and what we've talked about literally, from the time of back in July up into current day, this team is supposed to be the superior team, the better team. And I think that's what ultimately happened. The better team, just found itself and found its groove, in spite of the fact that you had an offensive line really struggling to protect and really struggling to get things going as far as establishing the dominance that was required for the offense to function the way they needed to.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with the offense. I think that, they started off slow, but I was never questioning whether or not the Ravens were going to win this game. It just felt like they were the far superior team. Obviously, I think that that tip ball that was caught in the end zone. The first touchdown that the Browns scored was kind of fluky, a la what happened in the Bills game last week. But there was never an instance where I thought, oh, this team is better than the Ravens, and I think the Ravens showed that. But yeah, to your point, very interesting, the Ravens' approach to this game to start. I think they tried to run the ball down their throat, and I think the Browns really decided to, let's send the house, let's stop Derrick Henry and see what this team can do. I think Lamar Jackson played fairly well. I think he was 19 of 29, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at the box score to see if I'm correct here. 19 for 29, 65% completion rate. So wasn't terrible. Q, sitting up there in the press box, what was your overall thought about the way he played, given that the running game wasn't much of a factor?
The poise that he showed to me was evident. The way in which you have to manage the game because of the fact that you're seeing 4 rushers come into you. Now it actually favors the defense because you can drop 7 into coverage, and now you're trying to have plays develop and open up. And to be quite honest with you, like for Lamar Jackson, just to all right, we're going to settle down at some point in time. And they finally did. They finally settled down. And, you credit Jim Schwartz for putting together a really good defense. However, Lamar Jackson showed that, look, all I need to do is just not necessarily bide my time, but take what the defense has given me. And I know there are going to be plays to be had. And those plays to be had is Tylan Wallace, because of the fact that you're so keyed in on certain players. Tylan gets a chance to come open. You're so keyed in on players. Tez Walker drags across the back of the end zone and beats a third string corner, which is what the third and fourth team receivers should do. At the same time, when you see the bigger picture and watch how the play unfolds with D-Hop, same thing. You're trusting your guys in the depth that you have on offense to come to pass, come to light. It happened, and it was shown because of Lamar Jackson and his ability. Okay, you know what? Here's the pressure. Here's where I need to go with the football, and he was very decisive all game long.
Yeah, I think offensively for the Ravens, what we saw over the course of the game, and especially the way that when the running game was not working, I think a perfect example of everything is Derrick Henry was able to rip off about a 9-yard gain in Browns territory, deep in Browns territory. Now, there was a fumble. Now, Tylan Wallace, thank you, Tylan Wallace. We can all say thank you for recovering that fumble. That would have been a disaster, right? But so he picks up a big chunk of yards there. And so the Ravens run a fake to Derrick Henry, and you see the defense step up and try to run with him a little bit. In that split second of hesitation, ends up giving Tylan Wallace enough room in the back of the end zone to get there. Lamar throws a perfect pass there. I thought Lamar, for most of the day, Lamar started off, I think, a little slow. We saw him throw a ball behind Bateman, right? We talked about that. But I think that the response, not just from Lamar, but honestly, I want to give a shout out to Derrick Henry real quick. Look, wasn't a great game for him on the ground. They were swarming. That man blocked like his job depended on it. We saw multiple plays throughout this game where he kept Lamar upright, kept the play alive. Even that play, the Browns sent the house to Lamar in the end zone when the Ravens were backed up on their own goal line. And Derrick Henry chopped down a defender to give Lamar just enough time to deliver the football to just get them out of the end zone. Just the tiniest bit. Those are winning plays. And so we know Derrick Henry's a winning player in terms of he's going to run the ball. He's going to pick up yards. He's going to score touchdowns. But when things aren't going his way, and honestly, this isn't just a Derrick Henry thing. It's a team thing for the Ravens. When things aren't going a certain guy's way, even Lamar at times is this way, right? Where it's not Lamar's game. Other guys step up to the plate, and you know what Lamar does? He still does his job and finds other ways to impact winning. I think that's what we saw today from a Derrick Henry. And to Lamar, I just think that, some of the precision that we saw later in this game, yes, to DeAndre Hopkins, yes, to Tez Walker and some of those other plays, Zay Flowers, right? And this is, I think, Zay Flowers' offense, by the way. 11 targets in this game. No other player had, I think, more than 4. So we see the connection between those two. Pay that man whatever he wants. Zay Flowers, That man hopefully will be in Baltimore for a long time.
You know, it's funny, piggybacking off of the Zay Flowers flow, I think the weirdness of how this offense has gone with Isaiah out. I'm getting a greater appreciation for what Isaiah does and how it actually helps Mark Andrews, but then it also helps out Zay Flowers. I think once they started committing to, their defense is like, yep, we're just going to go ahead and stuff you. We're not going to allow you to run the ball on us. Again, you're dropping back that 7. It's, Lamar's ability to get the ball out to Zay, number one, in those intermediate routes. But then also, number two, what he has the ability to do is in the quick game, because Zay has such a strong run after catch. The quick game is where Zay can, really do a lot of damage, which I know if I am Todd Monken and if I'm having difficulty as far as just what that defensive pressure is like and breaking through my offensive line, let me get it out to Zay real quick. That is their counteraction to things. But I think it's interesting how without Isaiah Likely in, there is just a different groove to this offense. And yeah, right now you're absolutely right. With the 11 targets, you had the 7 for 75. It definitely showed up. I think even, Rashad Bateman should have, could have, would have had a bigger game. I know there was a pass that, he's capable of making. Let's just say it that way. But even in that, as far as the passing attack, I think, again, this was a chess match type of game. Special teams clearly showed up because up until them blocking the punt, the offense was just kind of sputtering. He was just punting the ball. It was like a back and forth punt game. I think Nick Moore would be the first one to tell you, we go from hardly punting the ball at all to having a busy first half as far as, punting the ball until the Ravens offense started to kind of get their footing and doing what they needed to do. So lots of back and forth. And in my opinion, I think that's where the good teams find a way. Whereas you can clearly see the Cleveland Browns aren't quite there yet.
Not at all. The Cleveland Browns are definitely not there yet. But yeah, to your point, I think this Isaiah Likely, once he returns, hopefully as soon as this week of coming against the Lions and this team takes the next step, I think this sky's going to be the limit for this offense. We're just waiting for that defense to come in and be that consistent force. But to your point, the Ravens definitely have a playmaker in Zay Flowers who's going to be, a guy who hopefully is here for years to come. They need to sign that guy for sure because he is a baller. When we come back, we'll touch on a couple of injuries, including a player who might not really be injured, but didn't play on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. We'll touch on it here next on the Ravens Squad Show. You can just move through life, or you can find the things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there, choose your people. You can choose to go for it, like really go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we are back here with the Ravens Squad Show. Again, the Ravens take care of business 41-17. Over those Cleveland Browns. And the Ravens, before the game started, had some injuries of note. Isaiah Likely was out. Looked like Patrick Ricard wasn't going to play. We had some injuries in the game with Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Vinoy, Rasheen Ali. But we had one guy who was not playing, and not necessarily because of injury, but injuries was definitely a part of it. Jair Alexander was a healthy scratch. Now, he didn't have the greatest of games against the Buffalo Bills, but he did he did enough to maybe warrant the talking or two. Seemed like he practiced full on Thursday and Friday. Was a healthy scratch by the definition of it, considering he was not even a designated injury assignment for this upcoming game, for this game to happen. Q, what are your thoughts about Jair Alexander being a healthy scratch? Is that concerning for you, or do you think there's maybe more to it than maybe some people think?
Well, a couple of things. I think Zach Orr, talked about we're not going to hide anybody, and we're not going to sit back and allow guys just to go on out there. In other words, give them a pass. We're holding everyone accountable right off the bat. And so in that, Jair Alexander, They wanted to see where he was at as far as the game was concerned. So well over an hour before practice or before the game, usually what you'll have is guys go out there, and if they're questionable, they will work them out and they will see where they're at. And then if they are good, it's a yay. Or if they're not good, the trainer and you and your position coach, you give that thumbs down. It's like, yeah, he ain't going. It's good. And I think because of the fact that you had a situation where he didn't feel like he was up to it. And again, like I said, Zach Orr needs all hands on deck. There can't be an excuse. It was easy for them to say, okay, cool. You go ahead. You got to get right. Do your thing. But the main thing is the main thing. We got depth. And so Kenyon Martin comes into play. Obviously, we saw my guy, TJ Tampa, come in and step up. And it just goes to show you from a TJ Tampa standpoint, you just can't sit back and relax. You always got to put yourself in a position to be ready. It's one thing to say, hey, we're ready to go and all that, but there's nothing to be ready. And I thought he went out there and showed up and showed out. So that's more of a Zach Orr keeping his defense accountable. And unfortunately, Zaire wasn't able to go. But fortunately for the bigger picture is you saw them go out there and do their thing absent Jair Alexander.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of this Ravens secondary is you do have guys like TJ Tampa, W. Uze that can step up in those moments. And again, hopefully Marlon is all right. And, everything is all good with him. But, I don't think that they were wrong necessarily give Jair the day off. And that's kind of what John Harbaugh did say, right? And that's kind of, you want to get him time to get into football shape. He needs to be in football shape, get him physically out there and feeling good. Because as I've said, Jair or honestly any player being out there, not at 100%, not feeling their best, not feeling confident in doing what they can do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the player because they are not showing who they can be and their possible risk-free injury, whatever that entails. It's not good for the team because it hurts the team. And we saw that for the Bills game in week 1, where Jair multiple times cost the Ravens an opportunity to potentially win that game. And of course, it's not all on Jair. It's a whole effort. We've talked about that. But the corner position is one where you can afford to say, hey, you know what, Jair, we're going to get you right, and still have a guy like Nate Wiggins and Marlon out there and the depth that we've talked about. And it was really nice to see. The second TJ Tampa broke up that pass, I'm like, oh, I know Q's going to have something to say about this one. I know Q's about to say something about this one. So it was fun to see him go out there because we know TJ's talented too, right? These are talented players. And it's like what I talked about, and I talked about this on the instant reaction show I did just before we hopped on here, is that ideally, let's take it to the offense with Tez Walker, right? Tez Walker, the ideal plan here for me is DeAndre Hopkins. He's the vet. He can come in there. He can make plays like we saw today. But then eventually Tez can continue to build off of plays we saw from him, and Tez can maybe slide into that role next season as the number 3 for the Ravens if everything goes right. I think on the defensive side of the ball for a guy like TJ, it's probably going to be hard for the Ravens, assuming Jair bounces back and as the year we think he will, going to be hard for them to keep both Jair and Marlon on the team long term. So what do you need? You need guys on rookie contracts that are good players and you hope can contribute. Ideally, to me, TJ Tampa slides into a much bigger role next season after building up confidence this season. And I think today was a really good step in that direction.
Make no mistake about it. We got a lot of football left, and Kevin just broke the cardinal rule about talking about next year.
I related it back to this year. I did not break the rule. No, I did not. I half broke it. But I related it back. I saved myself.
Oh man, I was nervous. I was like, oh, don't feel not so fast, buddy. 15 games left, sir.
We got the Lions coming up. Boy, they're gonna be tough. We got the Rams coming up. I mean, Puka Nacua and doggone
They got Devontae over there now. They got Devontae Adams over there.
Yes. Now. Oh my goodness, Devontae Adams. Man, we got our hands full. We're gonna need all hands on deck. We can't be worrying about next year. TJ Tampa, we're gonna need them. We gonna need them all.
And Brian Bell said thanks for putting in TJ Tampa. So he's thinking this year too. He looks like he's feeling confident about TJ coming in. Yeah. So am I. I think that TJ Tampa's a dime back could be something to be considered. I wonder what the Ravens are going to do with Jair, because who are you taking out? Are you taking out Keon Martin, who's a special teams guy? I mean, are you taking out TJ Tampa after the performance he had? Do you keep all 6 DBs at once? And then now you're thinking about, depending on the injuries to Rasheen Ali. By the way, John Harbaugh mentioned that all 3 injuries, Ali, Benoit, and Humphrey, aren't severe injuries. So shouldn't be long term. I think they'll get more information tomorrow. I'm sure you'll be all over that. But they have some decisions to make here on the DB room, because, again, these DBs stepped up. Of course, it's the Browns. The Browns offense isn't legitimately going to be one of the feared ones. It's got the Lions coming up, Rams, as you mentioned, Chiefs, even though they're a little pedestrian first couple of weeks of the season. Whew, what are your thoughts about this?
I'm not going to.
You're not following for you?
No. Andy Reid and them, they're living rent free in my mind right about now. This is not going to be one of those cases where we can just, don't worry, the Chiefs. No, worry big time. The Chiefs are the Chiefs until they're not. And that's just the way it's going to be. The Lions, they don't have Ben Johnson as a coordinator. I don't care. Oh, wow. Look at the Rams. They're who's their quarterback? Why am I drawing a blank on his name right now?
For who, Detroit?
That's Jared Goff, but for the Rams.
Stafford.
Thank you. Man, Matthew Stafford is going to be talking about, we're going to put up a stat game. Yeah, we need all the bulletin board material we can get, because, man, this secondary, they're poised to do some great things. However, we cannot let up. This game was needed. It needed to be where the defense showed up and showed out, especially Agent Zero. I know we're going to get into him in a minute, but I think secondary-wise, there's going to be some quarterbacks that are going to be a little bit more mobile, or they're going to have more arm talent than where we saw with Joe Flacco today.
Let's talk about the defense, because, yes, the DB stepped up in the big way. Pass rush got to Joe Flacco, even though he's a little more stationary than most. Cavanaugh goes down. Unfortunately, the Cowboys signed Jadeveon Clowney, so our pride and joy is no longer going to be wearing purple and black, at least for not 2025, unfortunately. Where do we think the Ravens go from it? Because you mentioned it, Q. We got some big-time passers coming here. Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford. How are we feeling about the pass rush at this point, especially when we got to extend a look at Mike Green, Q? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, as I was watching Mike Green, I mean, he got into the rotation fairly early. I think it was like maybe the second drive or so. And, that was good. I was appreciative to see him out there. And I think the more experience he gets, you're going up against different size tackles and how it all looks and how it all is going to be. I think for him, it's just a scenario of getting the reps, and then he'll be able to, look at it and be like, all right, well, this guy, this is the way in which that tall tackle plays. Okay, this tackle here, he's a more of a strong, stout guy, and there's the ability for him to set up himself as far as his moves and stuff. But KVN, it does concern me, the fact that he is in a situation where he got a hamstring. And so you're trying to get off the ball as fast as you can and either set the edge, get around the edge, set up a move to counteract what the offensive line is doing. And that's going to be a challenge for a hamstring for Kyle Van Noy, especially with his age. So, if the Ravens are going to go out and look for a guy, I know our trusted Kevin Oestreicher will be on top of it to give us the names. However, until then, you're going to have to look in-house, and I think this is where Mike Green really steps up and shows himself capable of going out there. And then, of course, you have, David Ojabo, who I'm sure they're probably going to be like, all right, cool. You want it? Let's go ahead and let's see what you got.
Kayvon Thibodeau.
Oh,
it has taken me less than 30 minutes to find my new pass rusher.
We trading for him?
Oh, yeah.
Gotta trade for him.
Trading for him. Trade deadline coming up. Kayvon Thibodeau.
I like it. I'm not going to lie.
All right, so that's the new guy over there in New York with the Giants. But in terms of for the short term, because I don't think that move would happen for a couple of months now. I mean, we got the deadline coming up in probably like a month and some change there. You kind of just got to weather the storm. And honestly, I'm okay with them just giving Mike Green the keys and saying, hey, man, go out there and do your thing. Like, assuming Van Noy, and again, we don't know this yet, but yes, assuming Van Noy has to miss some time, your rotation of Owe, who I thought, yes, generated consistent pressure. I thought he was good throughout this game. He generated some holding calls and was doing his thing. Tavius Robinson, who had the strip sack. Yes, Mike Green. And then David Ojabo is probably going to be your 4 there. I'm okay with that, especially considering that you also have the interior presence that Madubuike gives you. 2 sacks through 2 games so far for him. I think Aeneas Peoples wins very quick at the line, and he's someone that is underrated in what he can do. We know Travis Jones, obviously, hopefully can step up and have big impacts there. But, you know, KVN's just kind of like that vet who steps up in big moments. I know his game against Buffalo wasn't great in week 1, but he's still an asset to the defense. Like, he's still someone that makes your defense better, even if it's just his smarts on the football field. He knows what's going on the field. He's been around. He's a multiple Super Bowl champion. Like, he knows what it takes to win. So hopefully it's nothing serious. I know hamstrings and groins can both be tricky for Van Noy and for Humphrey and Q. I know you know kind of what goes into that depending on the diagnosis or the news that we get on those guys moving forward. But I feel I honestly, when he asked the question, Sam, I was thinking, I don't feel that confident. And then as Q was answering, I'm like, wait a second. I think honestly with Mike Green in the fold, I'm like, you know what? Like, we saw him almost get that sack on Joe Flacco, right? We saw him almost do this and do that. Like, all right, honestly, let's lace him up, line him up and play. Like, I'm ready to see if those guys can step up to the plate in the big moments.
There's going to be a chance for Mike Green to get some action sooner than we thought. KO, we and I talked about it, about him getting those sacks and starting off slow up. It's going to be hitting the ground running in Monday Night Football, most likely against those Detroit Lions. When we come back, we'll talk about players who stepped up. We got a couple of names that we've already flirted with already. Got Fahizi over here saying that maybe the Ravens should trade for Abdul Carter with David Ojabo. So we might not have David Ojabo in here. So it'll be interesting to see. I know that's crazy, Q. I'm sorry. The speculation war is out in full force here. But when we come back, we will touch on.
We get Abdul Carter. My God, man.
I'm with it.
That'd be crazy.
Bring him to Baltimore. I'm with it.
That's not happening, man.
We can all dream. We can all dream. Don't brand on our parade.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, when we come back, we'll touch on the reality, the players who actually stepped up, who are currently wearing purple and black, and maybe some players who didn't quite live up to the expectations next here on the Raven Squad Show. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who's Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson delivered in a big way with 4 quarterback touchdown throws. When the pressure was on, he came through, no hesitation, no delay. And you've been watching week after week. This performance wasn't a fluke. Lamar Jackson is on a streak. And it's just like Lamar Jackson delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 on DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends through 11/18. All right, we're back here at the Raven Squad Show. Again, we are here twice a week. Once on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. and once after every Ravens game. That will be Monday after the Monday Night Football matchup with the Detroit Lions. Appreciate you guys for joining. If you're watching, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening, wherever you get your podcast, be sure to give us 5 stars and comment. It'll really help the show out. Also, make sure you tune in for the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Oestreicher all week long, including whether there's some big news in the weekends. Be sure to tune in for his daily Ravens news coverage. Ravens take care of business 41-17 over the Cleveland Browns. A lot of players stepped up. Q, I'll start with you. You were at the stadium. Which player do you think stepped up the most in this contest?
Well, clearly after Kevin and we were sitting there talking about it on the one podcast, we go over here to our Squad Show podcast, and the Joko was sitting there. He's talking about like, yo, what we got to do. And then all of a sudden, Oestreicher is like, well, I don't know what they gonna do, and then Ismail was like, well, I don't know what they gonna do. Agent Zero.
Yeah.
Agent Zero just said,
Nice.
okay, enough of it. Y'all made fun of me too much. I'm just gonna show you what's what. So at the same time, like Roquan Smith put it upon himself to go out there. Let me just read you the stat line so I don't mess this up for him, because I know
Yes,
people will be
please.
like, oh, Q, you didn't say it
Yeah,
correctly.
give him his flowers. Let's
I'm
go.
gonna say it correctly right now. You're talking about Roquan had 9 tackles, 6 assists combined for 15. So he had 9 solo. Excuse me. He had 6 assists, 15 combined. He had 3 tackle for loss. He had 4 all last year. 3 tackle for losses. Diagnosed a couple of them. That's why they were tackle for losses. Just I love that. And then at the same time, from a quarterback hit aspect of things, had the 2 quarterback hits. Of course, he had the fumble recovery as well. Roquan was making his presence felt all over the field. I love that forced recovered fumble, I should say, and the ability for him just to sprint down the football field. I mean, show his speed and getting into the end zone. I think overall, just knowing what the defense needed to have that guy. And it couldn't be any guy. It had to be Roquan Smith. I look at him as the player that was so impressive today.
I mean, I can't argue with it. I mean, it has to be Roquan. You can talk about Tez Walker, DeAndre Hopkins, like both of those guys making big catches in big spots, right? But I mean, I want to continue to give Roquan his flowers, because, you know, there was the clip Q of you and I that ended up a lot of people engaged with and commented on and shared their opinions about us kind of wondering, like, man, where's Roquan been? Like, we know that he's a good player, but where is the guy that, as you said, Q, they traded for and played against New Orleans and like had those big games? And, you know, kind of like we've seen those performances in spots, but sometimes just feels like Roquan, well, he just has a bad game, and everybody has bad games, right? But when you're paid $100 million, obviously those expectations are automatically sky high for you. This is the player the Ravens traded for, 100%. Like, this is the guy that they spent that second round pick on. They spent $100 million on, and it was not just like the splashy plays from him, like, yes, the scoop and score and, you know, some of the tackles he had, but he was in the right spots. There were plays where he was stopping plays from expanding to other things. Like, I can't remember what it might have been Jerome Ford.
Was it Jerome Ford into the flat and he just hawked him down like it was?
Yes, there was that one, and then I think there was another one where he carried the ball and he got to the first down maybe like a yard after, and there was like green grass in front of him, and Roquan came out of nowhere and just spun him down for like a gain of 3 when he could have maybe had a gain of 20. Like, it's those moments too. He was delivering the hard hits and everything along those lines. Sometimes it goes beyond the box score for these guys, and it absolutely did for Roquan. And that's crazy to say in a game he had 15 tackles and like every box score stat you could want. But, you know, the impact was undeniable, and it did. Like, it exceeded his box score statistics, which were incredible in their own right.
Roquan looked really good. I mean, yeah, he was. I mean, they asked him to move forward towards the ball carrier, allow more in this game. So that kind of mimicked or masked some of the deficiencies he's had in the past with being able to backpedal and cover those tight ends. But man, when he was asked to go and get it, he went and got it. And boy, that return down the sideline, I didn't realize how fast Roquan was until I saw him with green grass in front of him and plenty of green grass behind him as well. So I was very impressed by Roquan. I thought that he did a phenomenal job. And hopefully this builds for this defense as they get ready for a pivotal 4-game stretch with some big-time pass catchers and big-time passers coming up down the line. So give me another guy, Kevin. I'll start with you again. Give me one more guy. I know you guys talk about Roquan, but we got about 5 minutes left until the next segment. I want to get in one more player that you really liked in this contest.
Can I say Roquan again?
No.
You know what? Okay, you go.
Over you?
Yes, go ahead.
If there was ever a time to make a play and kind of set the tone, it was the way in which Kyle Hamilton early on in the Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco is trying to, make plays down the field, and, they diagnosed just a gorgeous play to the flat, and bam, I mean, just Kyle Hamilton, his tackle for loss was just such a pivotal statement, if you will. So I think there were these statement plays early in the game, and if there was ever not necessarily a player, but a coach that you got to tip your cap to, I mean, again, it's Zach Orr for getting his defense in general to kind of step up. And, you knew that Joe Flacco was going to be trying to sling it down a football field. So you got to say Nate Wiggins. Nate Wiggins was having a day. And then Nate Wiggins, I mean, shoot, he had what? 3 combined tackles. He had the tackle for loss. He, again, both him and Roquan and Kyle Hamilton, they all had their tackle for losses, but the interception and obviously the way he was able to return it really, I think, sparked just the dominance of the defense.
Yeah, that's a good one. And actually, I will not give a specific player, but more so a unit. I think the special teams unit was phenomenal today for the most part, right? That to me is honestly what changed the game and set the tone. Jake Hummel blocking that punt up the middle. The offense is sputtering. They can't really get yards. They're kind of sputtering out a little bit. And then Jake Hummel gives them position and says, here you go. Like, go do something. And they scored a touchdown on that drive. And, did they score a touchdown every single drive after that? No, they still had some issues. But again, it's plays like that. It's LeJontay Wester cutting up the field and so close to breaking it for a touchdown there. I thought Jordan Stout, outside of one punt, had a pretty solid day overall. The field was also helping him out. Ravens bounces all the way on a lot of those punts. And, Tyler Loop, although I know he'll be the first to tell you got to get those kickoffs under control a little bit and not give the enemy team the opportunity to get the ball at the 40-yard line. And, that's something that he has to work on. Is a kicker, like kicking the ball through the uprights, he's been nails. I mean, he's been really good. And like the kickoffs will come. I'm not worried about that with Tyler Loop. I think that for me, I've wanted to see through these first 2 games how he handled himself. And again, a lot of these are just like straight down the middle extra points. We saw Justin Tucker do it for a decade plus here in Baltimore, just straight through. And to me, I think that we know why the Ravens value special teams. We know it's a huge emphasis. And, I think the Ravens probably still would have won if they didn't have Jake Hummel block that punt, or if LeJontay didn't do all that, or the special teams was just average. But it is plays like those that can turn momentum and turn tides. And I thought the special teams unit was awesome today.
That's a great point. Well done with that special team shout out, because
thank you.
Jake Hummel block solidified the selection of having him on the football team. There were a lot of people who thought the Ravens should have kept 4 linebackers. I don't know who that guy was, but instead of keeping
he's not here. Yeah, he's not here.
He's not in here. But man, Jake Hummel really stepped up and definitely helped, quiet the critics when it came to John Harbaugh's selection of Jake Hummel. He was a force. And also, I'm going to give a shout out to the receiver group as a whole. I think the Ravens receivers have gotten a lot of pushback through the years. And, Zay Flowers seems like he's taking the next step in his evolution as a pass catcher. We talked about Tez Walker, DeAndre Hopkins being there. I know Rashad Bateman didn't really have the game that he would like, but, all things considered, I think this group, Greg Lewis has done a great job with. And hopefully as the season progresses, they get more and more acclimated to each other, and that rapport with Lamar Jackson continues to grow. And who knows, the running game could be, the starting point, but doesn't need to be the finishing point as well. I think this passing game could be a big time thing for this Ravens team as they get ready for, hopefully, the postseason. I'm not going to say Super Bowl anymore. After that Week 1 game, I'm going to scratch the word Super Bowl from my noggin until that Week 4 matchup where they prove to me that they can handle the big-time games. But, postseason is not out the lips yet. I think they can do well to get themselves there. And then when they get there, who knows what can happen. When we come back, we will touch on the negatives. Not a lot of negatives in here, but we'll touch on some players who we wanted to step up but didn't quite do so, and maybe what they can do in the future to gain our favor again when we return here on our final segment of the Raven Squad show. All right. Sorry, my well, we'll do it without the credits here. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We're back here with the Ravens Squad show. Again, we are here twice a week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. And after every Ravens game, including this one, as the Ravens take care of business against the Cleveland Browns, you can also catch us Monday through Friday with Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens podcast, Locked On Ravens podcast, where he's available all week long, talking Ravens news and things of that nature. So make sure you tune in, give him 5 stars, like, subscribe, all that good jazz as we get ready and continue to cover the Ravens as they move towards the season. Ravens take care of business 41-17. Hard to find some people that did poorly in a game when you score, almost 3 touchdowns more than the opposing team, but we will try ourselves and do so anyway. Kevin, I'll start with you. Give me a player who you wanted to succeed, maybe someone who needed to succeed and kind of hurt the team as they progress down the field here on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think hurt the team is the right word for this guy, but it's been a little tough for Mark Andrews here. I don't really know what to say, but 1 reception for 2 yards. Now there is controversy about that play he had in the back of the end zone because it looked to me a little watching it, and after the game, watching it again back, I thought I maybe saw 2 feet in the football move, but there was a perfectly timed punch out. I think it was Delpit, if I'm not mistaken. Could have been someone else, but for Mark, it's just been tough. The 1 catch for 5 yards in week 1. Again, the 1 catch for 2 yards here. We know he started off slow last year and ended up turning it up as the season went on. But, this Ravens team is going to get Isaiah Likely back, hopefully sooner rather than later. Ideally, it'd be for Monday night, but we will see. I'm curious to see what the splits are going to look like when Likely comes back and is himself here. Is this a situation? I don't think Mark is washed. I don't want to go that far right now. I think 2 weeks, that's an overreaction. And I don't want to, I'd give it at least 2 more weeks before we start to even have that conversation about Mark because of the year he had last season, like I just said. But, he's just not very involved. Lamar clearly is favoring Zay. And I'm interested to go back and look at the film from this one to see, are they phasing him out? Not the Ravens, but the opposing team. Are they phasing him out a little bit and saying, beat us with someone else, and that player is Zay Flowers, and Zay is taking advantage of his opportunities because teams know who Mark can be. So I'm curious to see if that is the case, but I guess I was just expecting a little more from Mark to start the season, and that in itself, I think, has just been a little disappointing.
I think it's interesting because you, as a play caller, have these are the plays we're going to get to Rashad Bateman. These are the plays that we're going to get to Mark Andrews. These are the plays that we're going to get to Zay Flowers. These are our strong plays that I think that, if it goes well, the backup guys are going to be able to have an opportunity based upon these matchups. And so that's where it's not necessarily the defense is phasing him out, but also, yes, the defense realizes that he's, been a go-to guy for Lamar for, pretty much his entire career. But you also look at it and you're like, man, I just think that Todd Monken's play calling isn't necessarily Mark Andrews specific. And so therefore it goes to Zay Flowers. It goes to other guys. And, that's the nature of the beast when it comes to you're trying to produce and you're trying to, see who is your playmakers. And you got Zay Flowers, who's your playmaker. You got Rashad Bateman, who has made some plays. Obviously had a quiet game today, but showed up in the Bills game. And I think that's where, bigger picture wise, it comes in bunches. Well, I think it could come in bunches when it comes to Mark Andrews as the year kind of comes on. Remember, they still got a block of games in this first part of the season. We 2 down and 4 more to go for this first 6 weeks where they're going to need a Mark Andrews. They're going to need all hands on deck. So is it a scenario where, we already know what's going to be when it comes to Mark Andrews and how he's going to, produce. And so we need other guys to kind of get in rhythm. Fine. And then when it comes down to it, we know we're going to be able to feed it to Mark. I don't know, but all I know is that this isn't a case where you're putting necessarily Mark out the pasture, but you're also, recognizing you need other guys step up, and they have. It's a good talent situation to have when you're talking about this Ravens offense and the Tez Walkers of the world, the Hopkins of the world, to be able to go out there. Wallace, we already know Thailand is just Mr. Reliable. You know what? We need a block. Let's go out there, and here comes Thailand. Oh, we need a guy in the red zone. Here comes Thailand. Oh, we need a guy out in the field. Here comes Thailand. We need a special teams guy. Here comes Thailand. Tylan Wallace, when his name is called, he just steps up and plays.
Yeah. I am sure Harbaugh loves Tylan Wallace. I mean, he's a special teams guy. He's always available for the offense to make a play. So I think that he's one of those guys who's going to be, a Raven for years to come, as long as Harbaugh is a head coach. And Kevin, to your point, I think teams do really take notice of Mark Andrews, especially in the red zone, and try their best to blanket him. He was covered pretty much on every single red zone trip, save for a few, and save for that drop that could have been a catch, 2 steps. Was it a football move? Was it not? I think that teams are really considering him a serious threat, and a lot of Ravens fans, at least on the comment section, they're talking about Isaiah Likely being the tight end one when he comes back. I think there's going to be something to discuss along those lines when it does happen, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how defenses attack both of those tight ends when you have a guy Isaiah Likely and somebody who has the rapport with the quarterback the way that Mark Andrews does as well. Well, let's talk about Isaiah Likely, in fact, because looks like he was practicing a little bit, Q, as the weeks went down. Maybe not officially, but definitely suited up on Friday. Do you consider week 3 against the Lions to be the game for him to come back, or maybe we're still 1 week away? If not, then we're at week 5, and maybe they should have used the IR designation on Isaiah Likely, but it seems like he's close, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's out running and doing more and more is a good sign. I think the ability to stop, start, and change direction is really the final piece to the puzzle. Anytime you have an injury, sure, you can go straight ahead and look the part, but it's the deceleration part that's really critical. But you're also looking at, for a tight end, and it could be somewhat covered up from play calling aspect of things, but you got to block. And so there's another human that's colliding with you and trying to push you back, and that foot has to be strong and stable. So when you are blocking, you feel good. I would say, sure. Waiting is not a bad thing. Waiting for him to come back fully healthy is to the Ravens' advantage. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not necessarily don't worry about it. I think, in other words, when it is his time, it's going to be his time. What does that mean? He's going to have that ability to go out there and make plays. He's going to have that ability to go out there and create mismatches. The fact that you're going to have both him as well as Mark Andrews out in the field, that's where the mismatches come about. So I want him to be ready for the mismatch, not sitting there and he doesn't look right. I want him to be right. And I know another person that wants him to be right, and that's his agent, because his agent wants to have as much leverage as he can in the offseason when they're going through those contract negotiations.
Yeah, it's about being able to trust yourself. And exactly correct. Like, it's kind of like what we talked about with Jair, where if he's out there and he's not feeling himself, he's, and I guess no player is 100% over the course of a season, right? Even if, you're quote unquote fully healthy, you're really not fully healthy because of the rigors of a year. But, if he's out there at 75%, maybe rushes back a little bit, it's not helping him and, his contract situation, and he's not putting out there the performances that could help him get paid a little more. And it's not helping the team because he's not able to do it what helps the team. So even if he doesn't play in this week 3 game, just keep it light. I wouldn't even probably expect him to have that full workload in week 3 if he does come back. I think, to me, my timeline's always been week 3. That's what I was thinking at first. So, wouldn't necessarily be anything like I wasn't expecting it, but I do think that likely they do need him back. I think it would help the offense out a lot.
I mean, hard to, get better than 40 points in 2 straight weeks,
right.
but let's make it 50 with Isaiah likely returning. So I'm definitely down to talk about potentially having him here for week 3. But if week 4 is the game, a little comeback from the toe saga of last year, then I'm all for that too. Let's just make sure he's healthy and ready to go and aren't any stops along the way, just a full streak to the postseason. That'll be fantastic. Before we close out the show, one more storyline to talk about. It's something that came out right before the game started. Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns quarterback, potentially, not even potentially, based on Adam Schefter, he's certain that the Ravens were all set to put the name on the card in the 5th round and bring it in to get Shedeur Sanders. But Shedeur Sanders found a way to contact the Ravens and told them, I would much rather play for an organization where I have a chance to start instead of playing behind Lamar Jackson Q. Considering that Shedeur Sanders is still QB3, emergency quarterback, likely would have been the same maybe in this instance, but still would have an opportunity to play for a world-class organization like the Ravens. What are your thoughts about him essentially choosing the Browns over the Ravens?
Yeah, I think it's odd to me. I don't, know if Adam Schefter, how, accurate it is or isn't, but, for Shedeur, I know if he were here, the noise of training camp would have been way different than the noise in Cleveland all this offseason and into the preseason. I know he wouldn't have been going to 100 miles an hour either. And as far as him, running and doing his thing after practices, whatever, I think this would have been a good fit for him. I think he would have had an opportunity to kind of grow and mature as a quarterback and not necessarily feel any necessary negative pressure to produce. Just go out there and get better as a quarterback. Now you're in a situation where you're in Cleveland and yeah, he's going to do his thing, be professional about it. But I think it's more of a distraction, the noise of it all, rather than if he was here, he could have put himself in a great position to show himself ready to go when it was his time. And that probably would have been elsewhere because clearly, Lamar Jackson is the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I can't really imagine a 5th round pick telling a team, yeah, sorry, I don't want to play for you, and like picking your spot. Now, you hear about those stories with like the 7th round and guys saying, yeah, I want to test my luck on undrafted free agency. Like we don't want to be drafted, all that. Like you hear that sometimes, even in other sports, like in the NBA, you hear a 2nd round pick saying, I want to, choose where I go. But, this is a 5th round pick we're talking about here. And Shedeur Sanders, obviously, I think a lot of people are in agreement that super talented player, slipped too far, the whole 9 yards there. But to learn behind Lamar Jackson, just why would you turn down that opportunity? And you're in Cleveland now, not like the scout team guy. Like you're not even active on game days. So you're still learning from a guy in Joe Flacco who, Super Bowl champion, the whole 9 yards. But, we've seen quarterbacks who get thrust into roles, aren't ready for it, and just fizzle out of the league. And we see other times where quarterbacks will sit and learn for a year or two. And yeah, the end game for Shedeur, if he was drafted for Baltimore, it wouldn't be Baltimore. The Ravens, and he probably would have had to come to some level of an understanding that, yeah, I'm going to come in, work hard, do my job. But Shedeur will probably say this isn't where I want to be long-term because Lamar's the quarterback. And that's an understandable statement. But I don't know. It's just like, why would you not want to come in, have an opportunity to win, be a part of a winning team, a winning franchise, and miss out on the opportunity to learn from a guy like Lamar? I think that's foolish.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, again, like you said, KO, I understand completely where he's coming from in regards to wanting to start. You're not going to start for Baltimore as long as Lamar Jackson's the quarterback, but understanding the situation you're in, you drop to the 5th round, then I'm drafting you to be a starter wherever you go. So best put yourself in the best situation to learn and grow. A lot of these quarterbacks, I think there's a famous clip from Tom Brady earlier this week talking about, going to franchises where they're teaching you the basics, coverages, all of that stuff, the mechanics, learning, growing. Remember, Lamar Jackson, his throwing mechanics are completely different this year from, when he first started in the league. Same with Josh Allen. So it depends on where you go, the coaching staff you have, all of that good stuff. Shedeur's most likely not going to get that with the Cleveland Browns based on the track record, but who knows? We'll see. But before we head out, Steve, Luke, shout out to Steve Luke for coming on the show because
What's up,
he
Steve?
did great today. Appreciate everything that he did for us. You know, I mean, he missed the extra point last week, but no one cared because we knew he'd make up for it.
Nails is a kicker so far. I'm telling you, absolute nails.
He is locking it down for the kicker spot. I think the fans are chanting Loop first time for him hearing it. Must have been dope to hear as a father as well. So shout outs to Loop and Steve and the rest of the Ravens franchise, both family and players as well. So that's pretty dope to see. Thanks so much, Steve, for joining us. And thank you so much for the rest of the fan base for joining us here on the Ravens Squad Show. Appreciate you guys. Again, if you're following us here on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening wherever you get your podcast, be sure to give us 5 stars, comment, help the show out a great deal, and make sure you tune in every day for the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Oestreicher. He'll be giving you Ravens news wherever you need it, whenever you need it. It's going to be right there on the Locked On Ravens podcast. So again, for myself, Kevin Oestreicher, and Kadri Ismail, thank you so much for joining us here on the Ravens Squad Show post-game edition, and we will see you on Wednesday.